Are you thinking of leaving corporate, but too afraid to make the move? Have you already escaped corporate, but are finding it hard to run your dream business? Are you wasting valuable time by attempting to figure challenges out on your own? We have created a podcast for corporate escapees running their own business. This is the Corporate Escapees Podcast by Build, Live, Give. We bring you first-hand experiences of guests going through many of the struggles you face each and every day as a corporate escapee. We get real with no corporate BS. And now, over to your host, Paul Higgins.
Hello and welcome to Corporate Escapees, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of people who are successfully running their own businesses, hearing their war stories and motivations for making the jump from their corporate gig. I'm your host, Paul Higgins, and our guest today is someone who really loved corporate. However, they wanted to go out and actually develop people because people were inspired by them, not because they were just their boss. And they also go through the key 3 C's to building better human relationships. There's some gold in the advice that this guest gives. Also, she talks about the insights behind running a practice rather than running a business. A great concept, and you'll get lots of value. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Renee Giarrusso from RG Dynamics. Welcome, Renee Giarrusso from RG Dynamics to the Corporate Escapee podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give. So we're going to get to know a lot about you today, Renee, but why don't we start with what your family or friends might know about you that our listeners wouldn't?
Oh, thanks for having me, Paul. I love and have for many, many years tap dancing. Not many people, I suppose, in my work network would know that. And I love camping. A lot of people would think the total opposite, but love to get out in nature, good food, family, friends, and just be, which doesn't happen a lot, but I love that.
Excellent. And tap dancing, is that you tap dancing or watching others tap dance or both?
Me tap dancing. Yeah, and I love watching others tap dance, and it's something I actually want to bring into my brand in the next year or so. So I've done modern and tap dancing since 10 years old. Had a bit of a hiatus the last few years, but I'm actually going back next month. Great.
And is it something you've got to regularly do for, to keep your fitness up for tap dancing?
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't think I'm going to be as fit as I was a few years ago, but the good news is, Paul, I still fit into my tap shoes from year 12.
Excellent.
It's fun. Yeah.
Right. And camping, what's some lovely spots? I know you live in Melbourne, Australia, but what are some spots you love to camp at?
Yeah, we go up to Tolmi, and we love the Great Ocean Road, just going down there and getting away. And something we're locking in is a few, long weekends, just to get that work-life blend happening. But, I love cooking. So camping for me is just being out in nature and cooking up a storm and sitting on the beach. And, I love it.
Sounds brilliant, actually. I'm going down to the Great Ocean Road on Thursday, so I can't wait for that. Go down and take my my young son surfing.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, good. Yeah.
So it'll be great. So your corporate escapee story, I know it was a while ago now, but why don't you just take us back to those moments and tell us a little bit about what you did and why you chose to escape?
Yeah, so Paul, it's 11 years ago, which feels like a lifetime ago. So much has happened since then. I loved my corporate career. I had, many roles in sales. I pioneered a new business channel, which I loved, and some senior leadership roles. And I got quite involved in the training of my teams, and the company I was in was very coach-centric. So I had a coach at 23 and was coaching from then, which is a while ago now. And I literally woke up one day and thought to myself, I'd really love to help people grow, take them to the next level, not just because I'm their manager. And I'm a real high change. I love diversity. And I must say, when I left, I sort of really questioned it for a few weeks, and then I was going to go back and, as we all do. But I think the defining moment for me was I just wanted more, and I wanted to give more and make a difference across a lot of different industries, not just within one.
Great. And what was the company that you worked for at the time?
Mars, Australia.
Yeah. And I know that, my background was Coca-Cola, which once again also had a really big L&D focus. And I had a coach, and that sort of inspired me to leave as well. But, what was sort of the key things that Mars helped their employees with? Obviously, you said you had a coach, but what else did they do that was unique around L&D?
Yeah, there was quite a lot, Paul. And I think, as you know, when you're in it, you don't appreciate it. And now working with so many different companies, they were quite ahead of their time in the learning and development. We had a platform where, as an associate, we could jump on and look at what our needs were to find a workshop or a resource that we could tap into and do at our own pace, which was quite unique. Very innovative. I mean, I was in confectionery and then food, both part of the same business, but very different, I found, culturally. And I think what they really promoted was strategic agility, so learning about other areas of the business and roles, which, really set you up for succession. And their L&D across pet, food, and snack was quite consistent. So if you did move to another division or area, you could carry on what you were doing in that area to grow you for what you needed.
Yeah, well, look, I've never worked for Mars, but I know that we did a lot of joint projects, and they seem to be similar. And it was interesting for me that, I often say that Coke was one of the best run companies in the world, but it wasn't necessarily one of the best products in the world.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And I think Mars is a bit the same. And I know Buffett, I think, owns shares in both of them. He's the largest shareholder in Coke. And I used to joke that he actually, fills you with sugar, and then he's got the insurance companies that collect the insurance at the other end. But it was interesting. For me, yes, the L&D was definitely a component, but also I just, used to walk into a party and say, I now work for Coke, and it was like, oh. Whereas when I was young, I first started back in the 90s, you'd walk in and you work for Coca-Cola, and it was very exciting. Did you sort of see any of that change back in 2007 when you were leaving Mars?
Yeah, probably because I went from snack to food. So I think if I'd been in confectionery then, yes. But you're right. I think, with the health trends and everything changing, definitely. And something I didn't mention that I think was the main thing and still is, and I still probably see 20 people from Mars, and I'd name them all very close friends, was the people, the culture. When I went into a role as an area manager when I started in my early 20s, they said you'll be here for a year or 10 plus years. And I sort of went, yeah. And it's so true. You're either that culture or you're not, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, especially confectionery is quite, seen as quite fun and a sexy category, I suppose, more than food and food service. But yeah, it was a great time. I couldn't be doing what I'm doing now without that as a learning ground for me, and the way it stretched me, at quite a young age.
Yeah, great. And what were some of the key fears? You said, you were really worried after 2 weeks when you made that change, but what were some of the key fears that were driving that worry back then?
Yeah, well, I guess it's the uncertainty of, what could happen, what might not happen. I'm, one of the almost primary sort of income earners, especially at that time. So we'd actually bought a house and knocked it down and were doing a development the month I decided to start my own business. So I think that kept me up at night.
Yes.
And I'm quite an alternative thinker, so I wanted to do everything. I had a card and a website before I had a client. I wanted to have everything done yesterday, and I think harnessing that, and something I've never doubted is my drive and ability. and continuously growing that, I think has really, really helped me, stay focused and really driven.
Great. And through the journey of, I think you went sort of through multiple companies or multiple facets, and it seems like that's a theme for you. You love change. You love, as you said, you love to grow. But what was or who were some of the people that helped you through that path?
Yeah, my husband, Brett, he's been amazing. He balances me. He's a builder. So he's more introverted, salt of the earth, loves his surfing, lives in the present moment. And then there's me. So I'm quite a future thinker, or I'm planning a year out. And I think we balance each other. So as much as he doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of what I do, he keeps me grounded and keeps me present. The other person's my mum. My mum and my stepdad have just been amazing, and mum's got a corporate background and she's been one of my mentors. And I think, in life we need mentors, different mentors at one time to give us different things. And she's been, I suppose, my critical mentor. Like, she'll tell me how it is and, again, be a good sounding board for me. I obviously have other mentors, but she's been a great support.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know you said she's still working 6 days a week at 69 and has got a fantastic work ethic.
She has, yeah. So driven, yeah. Yeah.
Great. And look, the next section is the build section, where we sort of find out a little bit more about what you do today. So, Renee, if you walk into a party or someone comes up to you and says, Renee, what do you do? How do you best describe that?
Yeah, I work with leaders, teams and businesses to really go to the next level in influence, communication and leadership. Then they always ask me, well, what do you do?
What's that mean?
And I say, well, the way I do that is through speaking. I'm a professional speaker, running workshops tailored to clients, and coaching and mentoring. And, I do a little bit of one-on-one, not as much as I used to, but I do a lot with teams, so creating limitless teams and limitless organisations, and really getting people to go from working in their teams to working on their teams, and overcoming the key problems I see and I've seen over the years is people are time poor, they're skill stretched, they don't have time, or they don't evenly weight the time to be solving the people problems, and just bringing in a human service mindset to be collaborative and take people on a journey. And what I think is really vital is leaders should be creating future leaders. And I think they're selfish if they're not, because at the end of the day, they've got to empower others to progress and go to that next level.
Great. And around time poor, so obviously that's a really big theme, and I think it's going to get more so. What are a couple of quick tips you can provide on how to better utilize your time?
Yeah, well, I'm not a big believer in time management. I think it's self-management. We've all got the same amount of time. So I think it's about obviously efficiencies, but some key tips that I know work for me is I do what I don't like first thing. So if I have a rare day in the office, the things that I might put off, which is usually the admin-y type stuff, I will do first, because I'll do that quickly because I don't love it, and then I can work on the things that satisfy me and light me up. Another one I think is I've always been a big chunker of time. So if you're on email, be on email, don't be on PowerPoint. If you're writing proposals, go into that zone and get your 5 proposals done. There's a lot of science behind chopping and changing and multitasking. It's just not productive. And another thing I do, Paul, that really helps me, and I know people in their business have a component of selling, is I make 5 calls every day to cold or warm leads. And I have since I've left the corporate world. Every day, even if I've been in an all-day workshop, I'll do 2 on the way there, 1 at lunch and 2 on the way home. So just basically leveraging your travel time on a plane, in a car, there's no excuses, you can do it.
Great. And how do you determine who to call for those cold calls?
Yeah, good question. Where I can, I go warm calls. I've been around a while and I've got a good network. So it could be asking for a referral. It could be someone that's liked a blog or sent me an in message saying that blog or article was great. I'll say, do you want to reach out and have a chat? And I tend to be like a lot of us, we've got a lot on, qualify that by phone instead of just turning up for a 1 hour coffee or something, which, in the early days, I think I did too much of. I love people and it's just not a great use of time.
Yes.
Also too, I run a few hangouts, Limitless Leaders hangouts. They're free. They're once a month. They're before work, one morning a month. And that's a great way to give something back, see executives' real problems and also connect with them if they want to do something further.
Great. And who are your ideal clients?
Okay, so that's an answer that I'm starting to bring in finally, because everything I do is around human behaviour. So my ideal clients are leaders, so managers, leaders, leading teams in large organisations, but I also work with a lot of SMEs. And I do a lot of work in the entrepreneurial space now because, a lot of them are thinkers and have great ideas, but bringing in the people skills is vital for their success.
Great. And when you talk about people skills, what sort of people skills in particular?
Yeah, for me, it's understanding others and what makes people tick. So emotional intelligence is huge. Like it's proven now, it's people hire over IQ now with emotional intelligence. Communication is vital. And Paul, my limitless leadership model is all around commitment, communication, and connection. And if you've got those three and you're filling those cups regularly, you're going to tap into other people and build rapport and build deep relationships and connect at a deeper level. I think we connect with a lot of people, but not what I call essence connecting, where you're connecting and forging these deep relationships. I think that gets missed a lot.
Yeah, and once again, what are some things that people can do to help with those 3 C's?
Yeah, so the 3 C's. So commitment is all around making sure you and your team are committed, not just complying, and there's a big difference in that energy there. So understanding purpose, intent, why your team or your business or you do what you do. Communication to me is don't rest on your laurel and think that, you're communicating. I think really understand, be present, listen more deeply. And a big one for me, and I do a lot of work around this, is ask better questions and ask less questions. So ask questions with intent to understand people. Don't just ask questions because that's where the topic you want to talk about. And also use their responses to go deeper into what's important for them. And communication too, with email, webinars, it's getting cluttered. And I think understanding what motivates people can really help you tap into people and build subliminal rapport more quickly. So not saying Mary's motivated by goals, that's great, but actually satisfying that, giving Mary goals, or Bill's motivated by problem solving. Don't give him goals because that won't light him up. Give him problems to solve and he'll still achieve that goal.
Great.
And
around connection?
Yeah, so connection's all around, for me, connecting deeply with purpose, with team, with organisations, and making sure it's a true connection and taking the time. And it doesn't have to be a 20-minute, empty chat. It can be just taking the time, especially as a leader, to coach and give each person in your team an hour of your time about what their key focus area is. The best leaders do that. And I think, if you're connecting as a leader with your team, then their team will be connecting, with them. And then you're going to get what I call a limitless organisation that can go anywhere.
Yeah, and it's an observation I see at the moment. It's particular in smaller businesses, is that there's so much time and effort spent on marketing and sales tactics. which,
Yeah.
I know is important and you need to market your business, but then they don't really allocate the time to leadership. And I think that's one thing that Coke, and it sounds like Mars also gave you, is that real importance of developing your teams. Do you see that in some of the businesses that you work in?
I do. There's a massive focus now, and I see it everywhere, on process and systems because of technology, but you can't take away the human piece. And the companies that are bringing more heart into their leadership and their organisations are seeing fantastic results. I totally agree that I think people default to that, or they get into leadership roles, as you would have seen, probably for not the right reasons a lot of the time. They're good at what they do, but the whole people aspect isn't their special sauce. And if they're not willing to work on it, I always say, you've either got to work on it and take it to the next level, or go into a role where you're just managing self.
Yeah, and your business model. So how does your business model work? How do you make revenue?
Yeah, so I was running more of a business model up until 4 years ago. Now I run a practice model. So that means basically I do most of the work. I'm the brand, and I've got some support people back end. My typical days are really broken up into think, sell, deliver, 3 areas. So the thinking is writing IP, writing blogs. I published a book last year. I've got another book coming out in a few weeks. Writing workshops, all that sort of stuff. Obviously the selling piece is, and I love sales, is lead generation, meetings and proposals. And then the last piece of that is obviously delivery, which is 70% of my time, which is where I'm with clients face to face. Can be hard at times. It can be lonely at times, as much as I'm with people all the time. I might run a team workshop, and when I walk away and everyone's happy and it's gone well, and then I'm in my car, I'm elated, but I'm also like, oh, I'm going to miss them. So I'm tending now to go deeper in less organisations.
Great. And around the book, I know that I'm just about to launch my book, but there's a lot of people listening now thinking, is a book important? I've heard mixed reviews. Some people say it works really well for them. Other people say not. What's your personal experience been around writing books and what it's done for your business?
Yeah, so I've always written. So it's an interesting one. If I had a little girl come up to me last week in a fruit shop of all things, and her mum knew me, and she said, "You're an author. I want to be an author." And I said to her, "Do you write now?" And she goes, "I write lots of little mini books." I said, "You're already an author." So that's one thing to remember. If you haven't got a book yet, if you're writing and sharing IP and thought leadership, you're already authoring. The book for me, I'd always had in the back of my head, I'd write the book sitting looking at a beach view down at Point Addis or something. I wrote my book in 12 weeks at night. I did a book hack, Limitless Leadership, Leading from the Inside Out, the book's called. And I think it's what you do with it, Paul. If you write a book and expect to make $1 million from it and stick it on Amazon, nothing will happen. Your book for me is the authority on your subject matter. So I think for me it's worked really well as a speaker. I can give the book away. Workshops, I give the book away. I sell it through Amazon and some other platforms. But it has definitely helped me leverage my brand and positioning in the market. And, I look back at it now and go, oh, God, did I really put that in there? But I think you've got to create and move on. And Matt Church, who's an amazing thought leader, that's something he always says, is to create and move on. What's next? Not get too attached to it. My book was an interactive book. So at the 11th hour, I decided my style is very interactive. So it's got exercises and things in it. Whereas the next book will be more of a content book.
Great. And, you talked about the 3 C's before, which were fantastic. What else makes you unique, Renee? I know there's lots of people in your space. What makes you unique, and people, what are the benefits of working with you?
Yeah, I think I've been there. So if I'm talking leaderships and team building or sales capability, I've done it in many roles. I think that's one thing. I've got that experience. I've got the war stories, all that sort of thing. The other thing I think that makes me stand out is I am very, very passionate and driven to give my clients and be in service to them like nothing else. So I'm always writing new IP, sharing new things I've read or done, and I think that's important. And I'm real, Paul. I do what I say I'm going to do, and I'm accessible as a collaborative partner for any of my clients, that I'm working with. Probably the only other thing I have to date in the last decade worked across 24 industries, and I can bring the knowledge in and have that adaptability to go from working with graduate engineers, to a drinks company, to a bank, to an IT company, to an automotive company. People are people, but I can still bring in other commonalities and challenges and share best practice at a deep level.
Great. And there's, lots of thought leaders, if I can use that term, listening to this podcast right now. For those that are listening around how to improve their profitability, what are some things that you've done to improve the profitability of your practice? And, I'd love you to share that with those that are listening right now.
Yeah, so profitability-wise, I think if you're doing a one day here and a one day there or an hour here, I think package your product, your service up. Not only will it give the client a better, deeper experience, it's obviously you're going to have key focus areas, and obviously your profit goes up there. I'm very much into now having a pathway, Paul. So instead of saying I'll come in and do a day, for me, that's a bit of a sugar hit. They will get a lot out of it, but there's no follow-up or embedding of the learnings, which is my pet hate. So I tend to, what I would say is, if you've got some really good workshops, pace them over a year. I've come up with a little thing called a skill pill, which is a 2-hour refresher in between my workshops where we open it up. It's openly facilitated. I don't do typical training. My stuff's very dynamic and interactive. And also to get across the modes, that's probably a big one. So if you're a trainer or a facilitator, bring coaching and mentoring in, bring speaking in if that's what you want to do. I've found going across the modes now, I look at what I want to earn and who I want to work with in those modes, and it helps me get a plan of not just what I'm sharing, but how I'm sharing it.
Excellent. And what's the number one source of new business for you?
As in industry or?
As in getting new clients. What's the best source of getting new clients for you?
So I'm starting to get a lot more referrals the last few years, which is lovely, and probably something I should ask for more, but I don't. For me, it is continuously reaching out, tightening your positioning, whether that's through social media, writing, running hangouts, whatever it is. That's really working well. And to not get your work locked in and get caught up in delivery. That's the biggest challenge that we have in what we do, because, you could have 10 days straight and no work after it. So I'm still selling while I'm delivering and mixing up that focus area.
Yeah, and I love that, 5 calls every day.
Yeah.
I think that's a great tip that everyone could go and implement. I know one of our mastermind members talks about 5 before 10. So he makes sure that before 10 a.m., he's making those 5 calls every day.
Yeah.
And as far as your team, who's supporting you from a team perspective?
Yeah, so I've had a business manager for a little while. She's recently finished up. So what I've got at the moment that's working quite well is I've got a social media strategist. She's fantastic. I write all my content 2 Sundays every month. I call it Social Media Sundays. So I write a few blogs, all my daily posts and images, and then I send them to her and she schedules those for me. Which, is fantastic. And obviously I post a few things too. And then I have someone that's, she's a designer. So when I write my workshops, she'll take the graphics and the format to the next level and keep my website updated and all that sort of thing. They're my main two. I bring in, there's 3 key coaches I bring in if we get a big coaching rollout, because I physically can't do all of it. And sometimes there's conflict as well in who's being coached. And that's a real practice model, Paul, opposed to what I used to have, which was more a business model.
Yeah.
And that'll evolve again, I would imagine.
Sure. And about finding the right people, how do you go about finding the right suppliers to support you?
I'm very big into referrals. If it's from a reputable source and I trust them and rate them, I'm quite trusting about that. It's worked against me at times because what someone thinks I need to what I need may be very different. But usually referrals, I am going to be looking for a 3-day-a-week business manager next year, and I will advertise for that. So I'll do that through LinkedIn and probably Seek. But I think when you're getting networked, you come across so many people, and especially in the corporate world, you know, people that might be off on a sabbatical or have had a baby and want a few days a week. You can, you know, you come across people. Yeah.
Great. And what's the biggest?
Not always easy.
Yes. And what's the biggest challenge that you face at the moment running your business?
Yeah, probably really making sure I'm focusing on the right things. So for me, you know, I do big days and I really do love what I do. It sounds a bit cliche, but, you know, I really do believe if you love what you do, it doesn't feel like work. For me, it's probably less is more. I have got so many things going on and they're all happening, but I think if I consolidate, which is what we're sort of going through this next quarter, I think it will be less work and a lot more results-wise.
Excellent. And before we go into the next section, I just want to talk about a community that helps corporate escapees, just like Renee, to build, live and give. You get direct coaching by myself and you get access to hundreds of suppliers. So as Renee said, referral is one of the best ways to get suppliers, and we've got 160 vetted suppliers in our community that people can tap into to help them rapidly grow their dream business. So you can just go to blgboost.com to find out more. So Renee, the next section is the live section. So what are a couple of key habits, daily habits that you've got that help you be successful?
Yep. Do what lights me up. So I know what lights me up and who lights me up. And it's a question I've been asking a bit lately of executives is who makes you sparkle, as in who gives you that energy. So my first thing I do there is make sure, you know, I've got the right people around me and the right focus, and I do what lights me up, which is really the biggest thing for me is the delivery side. I absolutely am on a high when I'm delivering, whether it's mentoring, workshops or speaking. That the contacting 5 people a day still works for me, and I think it's like having lots of tentacles out there. You'll only catch a few, you don't catch all, but it's good. I think something I'm working more on this year, Paul, is work-life blend. And you've probably heard work-life balance, people are saying is a bit of a myth because you feel something's got to give and you feel guilty. So work-life blend, I do a week off with my husband every quarter. He's also a business owner. And it's only a week, but because it's only 5 work days, if you're organised, you can leave and come back and the world hasn't ended. So that works really well. And find what your meditation is. I know it's a bit overused, that word, but my meditation is either yoga or cooking. Cooking zones me out. I cook most nights and then I'll go back and do some work, and it energizes me. It fills my cup and it gets me in a zone where I'm just mindful.
Great. And you mentioned Brett, your husband. I think that's a great idea of taking some time off once a quarter. But what would you like to say to Brett when he listens to this podcast? And Brett, if you're listening now, Renee, what would you like to say to him about the support he's given you through this journey?
Oh, he's made me emotional because we haven't seen each other much lately. I'd love to say, first of all, how proud I am of him. He's a builder, and I think they get underrated, the amount of work they do for what he does. And I'd like to say thank you for being you. As different as we are at times, we complement each other, and we're at a stage where we can actually consciously appreciate how different we are, but also the things we have in common that sort of align us together.
Excellent. And the next section's the give section. So what's a community or a charity that you're passionate about, and why?
Yeah, I do some pro bono mentoring for rare birds, so helping up and coming entrepreneurs. And I've got a very exciting mentee at the moment, which is really rewarding, and it's nice to give that back. Every year I give away quite a few mentoring sessions to charity auctions, and I love doing that. And that's also too, I get to meet new people and give something back. A cause that's quite close to my heart is the RSPCA. I'm a big animal lover. So we're actually about to adopt a rescue dog pretty soon, which is exciting. We've had two dogs that lived till they were 16, and they both went 2 years ago. So I think it's time.
Excellent. The last section is the action section, where I'll ask you some questions and just get your rapid fire response. So the first is, what are your top 3 productivity tips?
Know what motivates you and satisfy that. Chunk your time and be in the zone to do that 1 or 2 things at once. And work on you. I think you can't lead others or a business if you're not a leader of yourself. So work on you. The world's your oyster. Podcasts such as these sorts of things, books. There's so much at our fingertips, and I think working on you helps you be in service to others.
Great. And what are some favourite apps or software that you couldn't live without?
Yeah, so I've come across Voxer a few months ago, which I love, which is where instead of leaving people messages, you can just leave a quick voice message directly to them. That's fantastic. And the other one that I got introduced to through probably 2 years ago now is Blinkist. So that gives you just key insights to any business book you choose that they have. That you can listen through your audio or you can read it. And I do 2 of those in the car every day. That's sort of not negotiable.
Great. And you mentioned podcasts, but what are some of your favourite podcasts that you listen to?
Yeah, I love The Good Life Project. Really, really good. And I love Elizabeth Gilbert's got some really good ones out. And I will be sure now to be listening to your ones, Paul.
Brilliant, great, and share it with all your friends as well. So some parting advice. What are some parting advice you'd love to leave our listeners, Renee?
Oh, so some parting advice would be, whatever you do and wherever you go, it's in your hands. And I think knowing what you want and being up for the challenge is what opens up the opportunities, and the things that you'll remember as the best things that happened to you.
Brilliant. Well, look, we'll have all the links to everything that Renee's mentioned in the show notes. And also you can find out more about Renee at Renee Giarrusso, I should say, .com. So maybe you pronounce that so they get the URL right.
So it's reneegiarrusso.com.
Excellent, brilliant. And I know there's some public workshops coming up around the limitless property that you've got, which I think is fantastic. So there'll also be information on your website about that as well. So Renee, thanks a lot for coming on today. We really loved you sharing your story and really opening up your heart. I think you're inspiring in what you're doing, and I think hopefully more people will find out more about what you do through this podcast so that you can go and help and inspire others. So Renee, thanks again for coming on.
Oh, thanks, Paul. It's been a pleasure. And thanks for taking the time to have a chat. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's Paul here again. And I wanted to introduce a new section to the podcast. And it was actually recommended by Renee, who is such a fantastic guest on this podcast. And what she said is, why don't you just summarize the 3 key takeouts that you've got to help people get that? Because not everyone goes and listens to the show notes, which I completely get. So for me, the 3 key things that Renee left with me, one was around technology. So yes, technology drives the world at the moment. It's so important, but it's also so critical to have those human relationships. And if you're sending something on LinkedIn or you're reaching out to somebody, just remember that it's a human at the other end and you're making people-to-people relationships. And I think that was one key thing. The next one was around working on the 3 C's. So that's about building better human relationships. And that was commitment, communication, and also connection. And Renee left some great tips on how to do that. And the third thing was her great idea around making 5 calls a day. So whether they're warm or cold, she makes sure that every day she's making 5 sales calls a day. And I think also you could include referrals in there, asking for referrals. I know Renee said she'd love to do that more. And I certainly know for us, where members ask for referrals more, they definitely get it. But you've got to, it's a numbers game. You've got to be making the sales calls to get your revenue up. So I'd love to know what you learnt from the podcast with Renee. Just email me at paul@buildlivegive.com. And also, if you've got a friend who could benefit from the great insights from Renee, also please share the podcast with them. And also, we'd love for you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. So I look forward to hearing you soon on the Corporate Escapee podcast, brought to you by Build, Live, Give.
Thank you for listening to the Corporate Escapees podcast, brought to you by the team at Build, Live, Give. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it with other corporate escapees. If you would like to join a community of like-minded peers, please visit www.buildlivegive.com. Until next time, thanks for listening and be brave.